Hey friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here listening to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. Here we talk all about the ins and outs of designing knit and crochet patterns and running a business that makes it all possible. I'm Jessica, your host, knitting pattern designer, design mentor, and the friend in your ear. Can't wait to dive right in. The Pattern Design Circle podcast is sponsored by the Pattern Design Circle, a membership community for knit and crochet pattern designers that are feeling lost, lonely, or frustrated in their business. It connects you with a supportive community that's always eager to answer your questions and help you through the hard times. And there's loads of resources and activities specifically catered to business and designing. Sound like your jam? Check it out at snickerdoodleknits.com/design-circle. That's snickerdoodle, like the cookie, knits, knits.com/design-circle. All right, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. As always, I am so excited to be here in your ear, chatting about life and business and all of the things so that we are living fulfilled, productive. That's not what I meant to say. Fulfilled lives that bring us so much joy. I threw myself off. What I am talking about today is another episode where I kind of share a piece of content that I really resonated with me recently, and I wanted to kind of share my takeaways and a little more of my thoughts around it. So it is about productivity. Hence the reason my words got messed up. But yes, so this was a YouTube video. I didn't write down who it was, but when I went back, I think it was the podcast episode from Mark Manson's podcast, and he was with Cal Newport. So it was about, if that is the correct episode, it was about Cal's book. And so anyway, I just took a couple of notes and wanted to talk about it because I felt like it was really, it kind of brought some things to clarity for me, some things that I've been passionate about for a hot minute and that I feel like are important. And it's also kind of this internal tug of war that I experience, and I imagine you might experience as a creative business owner who's really trying to run a business that we love and that feels aligned and meaningful, purposeful. Maybe that's the word I was looking for when I said productive. And that really just lights us up and feels in alignment. So the at least the notes that I took, it's been a couple of weeks since I listened to this episode. So I had taken some notes on my phone as I was listening of things that I wanted to remember and I thought might be helpful to share with you. So the first kind of topic I have notes on is this idea of measuring productivity. So in our society, as a capitalist, consumerist society, and in case it's not obvious by my accent and all of the things, I am in the United States. So that gives a little context to kind of what I'm thinking of when I say society. But we're so used to measuring productivity as like output or like that it has tangible results that we can prove. So a couple of examples that they talked about was like if you're a writer, maybe you feel like you should have a number of words that you write every day, and that is your definition of being productive. Or maybe it's working a certain number of hours, like we're used to in especially corporate world, but pretty much any time you're employed by somebody, this number of hours that you're supposed to work, and that is kind of your definition of productivity, rather than it being actually about the work that you are accomplishing, right? Um, and if you're an author, maybe it's the number of books that you've written. Um, then they did talk about, like, all right, so how do we measure? I guess let's take a couple steps back. If that is our definition of productivity, our measurement of productivity is something tangible like that, something, or I guess measurable like that, that anybody else could, it's like you can't argue over whether you did that or not. Like somebody else can confirm that, yeah, you were working at your desk for 8 hours, or can look at what you wrote and confirm that it was 10,000 words, whatever it is. When that is our measurement of success and productivity, that then really we're just pushing to reach that goal, right? So if you are striving, okay, let's say, um, well, let's just keep with the number of words. Let's say it's your goal to write 10,000 words a day. If you are like, then you write those 10,000 words, right? And you have accomplished it. But what have you actually achieved as a long-term goal? Like, is your goal actually just, that's in air quotes, just to write 10,000 words a day? What are you receiving out of that? What is like the goal that you are achieving from that? Is it really that you just want to be able to say that you did it? Or are you wanting to do it to make you a better writer? So the kind of argument that they're talking about here is that by like basically having a measurement of productivity and success that isn't actually what the goal is related to, or what, like, it's not actually measuring towards that goal, that then we are spending our time and energy working towards something that isn't necessarily achieving what we want to achieve. So you can write 10,000 words and it be nonsense that you don't really care about. It could be words that, sure, you wrote them, it gave you practice in writing, but it's not quality work. It's not work that it's not maybe working towards actually getting it into the book. It's just getting that thing done. And so kind of my takeaway is like, what's the point? Like, um, and you've probably heard this argument just like with corporations and stuff in general. If we're not measuring success and productivity in a way that really makes sense goal wise, then there's a lot of time that's being wasted. There's a lot of energy that's being wasted. And as business owners in particular, like, we don't want to be wasting that time, right? Like, when you are an employee, maybe it's easier to be like, well, I'm getting paid. It doesn't matter. I'm just doing what I'm told. Whether I have quality work or not, like I get paid the same amount. So, um, or maybe it's like, I feel like I've heard some people talk about like, well, they get their work done, but they have to sit in their seat and, for the full 8 hours, maybe they got all their work done in 4 hours. And so they're sitting around for 4 hours. Um, and so really is that adding to life, to your work, um, to your employer? Like if you're just sitting around. Um, And so I guess it really ties into intentionality. And I think intentionality is something that I talk about a fair bit. It ties into a lot of what I talk about of really being purposeful. Like what's the reason behind this? What is the purpose? And it kind of felt like maybe something clicked related to the episodes that I had on um, scheduling and planning and goal setting for the new year. There was a whole series there. I talked about in one episode about kind of how difficult it is when you have, for me, as a creative business, and I think this is something that a lot of creative business owners experience, having the money goal just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when my goal is, authenticity, alignment, intentionality. And so having kind of more of a goal that is like a theme or like contributing positivity to the world or being a kind and generous, compassionate person or business owner or business or whatever it is. Um, and so I think that goes along this line of like, all right, so we have this goal that is, I want to spread positive stories that are motivational and inspirational to people. And then if I'm measuring my productivity by, all right, I'm going to work 8 hours a day, like, or I'm going to sit in my chair 8 hours a day, is that getting me there? Or is something more like I'm going to do three things that I'm going to tell three stories a week that spread this positivity? That's going to be something more direct, right? That actually relates to it. But you also want it to be quality. So it's not about getting it done uh, in a certain way, but it's more about if it actually evokes those emotions of inspiration and motivation that you want them to. And so I guess maybe what I'm saying there is there's more emphasis on the the result for the person receiving it, the recipient, than there is on the production of what was actually created. Like more emphasis on it being something that really resonates with my audience rather than an emphasis on having three stories. Or even here with the podcast, having, being more mindful so that the episodes that I'm creating are really impactful rather than really focusing on, oh, I need to record another episode because an episode needs to come out tomorrow. Um, just that level of intentionality that gives us more purpose and meaning, makes us enjoy what we're creating more, and it actually provides more for our audience. So, in a business perspective, this is actually working more towards a successful business, right? It's actually moving towards our goals. So then they talked about how really it is productive to take breaks, which we also talked about back in the scheduling, goal setting, all of the stuff around the new year. If you haven't listened to those episodes and this kind of sparking your interest, go ahead and listen to them, of course. They're all on the podcast. So anyway, that it is productive to take a break, to have a vacation, and to gather inspiration, especially for us creatives. Um, Mental breaks are so important just for our brain in general, but there is so much evidence that proves that taking a break and not pushing through actually yields um, more creative inspiration, more artistic like creations, more innovative creations. It allows us to have the space to really kind of be in touch with ourselves and to just have an openness to new ideas and new perspectives and just allow things to kind of fall into our lap more, where this idea of needing to be extremely productive in terms of what we're used to defining productivity and success as, that there's so much just pushing through and meeting those quotas, meeting those timestamps, meeting, all these numbers, that it is much more difficult to have something that's creatively inspired. It's Sure, you can create the thing, but is it something that's as meaningful, as impactful, that you have as much passion around? And I think that for us as creatives, this is where we see a lot of people burning out, uh, getting really frustrated in their business, falling out of love with their business, feeling like they're not doing work that lights them up, is um, when there are all of these things like, all right, I need to have 15 designs that I'm going to publish this year, or I need to have 20 videos that I'm going to create this month, or I need to, all of these things that we kind of, which, yes, sometimes having those bounds, having strict sort of quantities can be helpful. But like I feel like everything comes down to know yourself. Know what is actually working for you. Know what season you're in. Because I know for myself, sometimes, yes, those quotas are super helpful because it's like, all right, I got to contain all of these creative things and like actually get them out into the world, right? So it's like, all right, I need to choose 20 of these ideas and actually bring them to reality, not just staying in that inspiration idea phase, but bringing them to fruition. Um, but then there are other times where it's like, all right, I've been hustling and pushing for so long, and it's just drudgery. It's just hard to come up with the next thing. It's just start dreading it, start feeling burnt out, start feeling exhausted, and really not feeling lit up by what we do. So um, that's where, like, actually, it is productive to do nothing. It's productive to take things off of our plate, to remove some of those commitments, to allow space where we need it when we need it. Um, and again, this is about knowing yourself. Don't push yourself into a box because another person, another business owner, another creative, another artist, another pattern designer said that this is what you need to do to be successful, because maybe that this is what works for them all of the time. And they're like, hey, if you do this, this will help you. It might help you. It also might only help you for certain seasons. Be mindful of that. Stop pushing yourself into a box that you don't need to be in. Yeah, encourage yourself into the boxes that actually help you, that actually create, the parameters and the boundaries that are helpful for your creativity, that are helpful for your inspiration, but don't push yourself into spaces that now you just feel like you're backed into a corner. All right, and then my third note from this uh podcast episode, or this, I think it was a podcast, the YouTube channel, um, is to obsess over quality. And as a result, slowing down will become natural. I love this so much. Um, I think there is so much value. And I imagine if you've been following me and my business journey for several years, you have noticed this. There's so much value in slowing down. I think there's so much more that we can get out of life when we step away from hustling and when we step away from all of the pressures that we tend to put on ourselves or we adopt from other people, society in general. Um, there is so much space and joy and ease. That doesn't mean easy, but ease that comes in slowing down. Um, and like everything, I say this with some nuance because I'm the kind of person like I do still need to have quite a bit going on to like really feel, I don't know, have some momentum and to like be excited about things. Like doesn't mean I just sit around and do nothing and then I feel really fulfilled. But slowing down some of those expectations, some of those goals, some of those parameters of success and participating in more activities that are slow. Um, that I find that to be such powerful thing in general. So anyway, what they are saying here though is that you don't necessarily have to start by saying, all right, I'm going to slow down. Instead, you can say, all right, I'm going to obsess with the quality. Rather than obsessing over the production, the number of things that are being output, I'm going to obsess over the quality of what I'm creating. I am going to make this a high quality piece of content or a high quality contribution to society, a high quality piece of artwork that I am putting out into the world. So that might be your knitting pattern designs. That might be your social media posts. That might be your emails to your newsletter. That might be what you're sharing in a community. All of these things, rather than obsessing with the quantity, rather than obsessing with some parameter of productivity, obsessing over the quality that you're creating. And for myself, I feel like that is then means, the really the impact on the person who's receiving it. The so like let's take a knitting pattern design. Um, if you rush through and don't check for mistakes, maybe you don't even knit up a sample of the design and you skip over test knitting and tech editing and send it out into the world, um, and you don't put in a lot of thought into the quality of it, sure, you might be able to pump out 50 designs in a year, but is that what is meaningful to you? Is that what you want your brand to stand out for or represent? Um, or would you rather, which is more kind of where I come from, take a lot longer time with creating the designs and more intentionality, ripping back, reworking parts, um, working through how things are written, working with test knitters and tech editing, and providing more resources around it. That means in that process, you can't create as many designs, as many patterns in a year, but the user experience is going to be much different. So it might depend on what exactly you're designing, who your audience is, all of those things, right? But being mindful of what you want the end product to really look and feel like from an experience perspective, I think is super valuable. And so again, slowing down will become natural when you start obsessing over the quality. Um, then they said people who obsess over quality don't have to take time for themselves. Like they don't have to intentionally set aside time to take breaks because they know that when they're taking breaks, when they're making time for creative inspiration, for writing or for design ideas or whatever it is, they know that taking those breaks is contributing to the quality. They know that pushing through is actually going to hinder the quality. Spending 15 hours a day working is actually hindering the quality. And so if you are actually most concerned with the quality of your work, you are naturally going to take more time for yourself. You're going to take more time for yourself to do other things that you love, other things that you're passionate about, other things in your life that are important to you, just other things that light you up because you know that as you are a more complete and aligned person, your work is going to be higher quality. Isn't that beautiful? I love that so much. And it totally makes sense, right? And so really being mindful of what is the goal here? Even as you create, say, your daily checklists, you create your weekly to-do tasks, you outline the projects that you want to follow through with for the quarter or the month or whatever it looks like for you as you're creating your content plan. Take a look at it and ask what is actually the intention here? What is the purpose here? What is most important here? Is it saying that I put out an Instagram post every day and an email newsletter every week and that I have a podcast episode every week? Or is what's most important what my audience is receiving? Is it helping my audience feel heard and seen? Is it really creating something that is valuable and meaningful and makes an impact in the world? Um, and yeah, so I guess my last note on here was that if you just keep pushing through, it ends up negatively impacting your quality. Um, so I'm really curious. I hope this feels like as much of a light bulb moment for you as it did for me, because it's so easy to get caught up in what business strategists say you should be doing, what marketing coaches say you should be doing, what everyone else in the industry seems to be doing, what you think you need to be doing in order to have some image of success. But is that really creating what you're wanting to create? And so I feel like some things kind of clicked into place for me where I was like, oh, so those are some of those places where it still felt like there was misalignment in my business because I was still pushing to these certain kind of parameters of productivity or defining of what success meant or um, just these kind of quantitative results rather than paying attention to, all right, there is this why that is for my, my whole business, or maybe each kind of branch of my business, pattern design circle and snickerdoodle knits fulfill different purposes for me. Um, so there's this big why. That big why then branches down into, the goals and the projects and um, the things that I want to work on, whether that's on a quarterly or a monthly level. And then from there, those branch down into maybe the specific patterns, the specific collaborations, the specific events, the specific content, all of those things. And I just love how it feels like more and more I realize that why can be connected to all of those things. Sometimes maybe it felt like that why was up there, just in its own little cloud, and the goals kind of just scattered other things, like a lot of things that you need to do to be successful or to achieve certain things or whatever, that then like the end things would eventually, fulfill my why, right? Or like sure, this why is like a overarching thing, but it was a little bit harder to trace how does this connect to all of these pieces. But to really be mindful as creative business owners, what our purpose and our mission and our why is for what we create, and really drawing those lines, drawing those connections to every bit and piece of our business to understand, oh, this is how this all connects. This is what's actually important. This is how I can actually measure productivity. This is how I actually know that I have achieved what I'm working towards in my why, rather than, all right, well, I did my 5 Instagram posts, I did my 3 podcast recordings, but really being able to connect that. And that makes it so much more purpose-filled. That makes it so much more, I don't know, enjoyable, I think, to create as a creative. And then it makes it easier to market too, because you know that what you've created is actually like created specifically for your people. It is created to have this great impact, to actually be meaningful, to actually provide quality and um oh, I don't know what the word is. I can't. Anyway, it's actually like helping them. It's actually solving an issue for them. It's actually, like giving them something super valuable that they really appreciate. And then it's easier to talk about it and be like, hey, here's what I created. And you're excited about it. You're genuinely passionate about it. And all the things. All right. Obviously, I am getting passionate about this topic. But I do encourage you to take a look at how you're defining productivity on like a day-to-day, maybe even hour-to-hour level and a week-to-week, like a weekly level. Kind of do an audit of the tasks that you have set up for yourself and figure out, can I directly link that to my why, my purpose, my mission? What is actually productive here? What is actually worth my time? What am I actually creating that is meaningful and creative and all of the things that you are actually striving for? So I hope you found this helpful. I would love to hear if you are enjoying this format of the podcast where I dive into other people's content essentially and share it with you because it has inspired and motivated me. Alrighty, I will get you on the next one. Wow, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found it valuable, please share the podcast with a designer friend. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It's so helpful for me and means the world to me. Chat soon.